That's bad.
So I was planning on testing the S10 today, getting the tune a little bit closer, a little more dialed in, and taking it up and down the road a few times, getting the fueling figured out, because the fueling is the main thing that's the issue right now. And trying to get that pretty well sorted so I could start making some passes in it, get a pretty good number out of it, and then put it up for sale. Because ultimately, I don't want to keep the thing. However, the O2 sensor on the brand new AEM wideband, golly, that is bright, huh? The O2 sensor on the brand new AEM wideband, I know, AEM's pretty hit or miss. I had one in Goldie for 3 years that I never had any issues with. This one I got installed on, I think, the 8th or the 9th, and within a day the sensor failed. So got a hold of them, did their tests, which if you've never done like tests to rule things out, you'll turn on the ignition or whatever's powering the gauge, and the tip of the O2 sensor should get, quote, extremely hot, which this one did, so the gauge was good. But then you spray a rag with like starting fluid or something flammable, and then wrap it around the O2 sensor, and the gauge should read extremely rich. Mine stayed pegged at full lean, so told them that, and they were like, all right, we'll send you a new one. Should be there in a few days. They're only going to do that once, and then I'd have to buy my own. They don't replace sensors typically, but this one was so early on that they were like, yeah, that's our bad, homie. So for right now, the S10 is over there. I don't know if I've actually shown you guys any updates on this thing recently, but yeah, I moved some stuff around inside. I redid a little bit of the wiring. Hopefully that wind noise isn't too bad. This truck's just pretty dang decent. So, like in here, like I said, my favorite shifter of all time. That isn't changed. But we got the tach here now, which is all wired up. I have to do the like booster wire for it, or whatever you want to call it, which is just adding in a 12-volt wire with a, I don't remember the resistor size, to the signal wire for the tach, and it should work. I got it all wired up. It's set to 4-cylinder, which you need for the LSs. It's just not working, so I'll have to add that wire. And then over here, made a little plate to hold the True Boost and the AEM wideband. Here's the switches that we were using. This is for accessories and ignition. This is for the starter. And then down there on the kick panel, made a little bus bar for some of the 12-volt takeoffs, and mounted the fuse block and stuff like that. So it's cleaned up a lot in here. It's looking pretty good. And then in the engine bay, I don't remember if I showed you guys that I welded the charge pipe here just to keep it away from the accessories and everything. So as soon as I get the O2 sensor back, I can hopefully get the fuel tables a little bit closer, and then start running it, see what it does. It should move pretty dang good. I took it out twice yesterday before realizing that the O2 sensor was completely failed, because when you'd start it up, it would read for a little bit, and it would kind of bounce around super erratic, and then it would just get pegged. So I was like, man, maybe this thing's just super lean. Kept adding fuel to it, didn't move, and then I was like, well, there's no way that like 10-to-1 is still lean. But yeah, I took it up and down the road a couple times and got into boost a little bit, and about 6 or 7 pounds, this thing was feeling pretty dang good. But unfortunately, until that sensor shows up, I can't really get the fuel tables figured out. So we're kind of at a standstill on that for a few days, which means, oh yeah. So I'm going to try to get a little bit of the wiring done. The only things preventing this thing from running are fuel, a little bit of wiring, which is basically, I think, some powers, grounds, and the fuel pump wire, and like a switched ignition wire, and a starter wire. I think that's it. Which, unfortunately, on this effing thing, the ignition is screwed, and I'm not going to put a new column in this, so it'll probably be another toggle switch deal. But yeah, that's kind of all that's stopping this thing from running, I hope. And I got to put injectors back in it. Fingers crossed, everything on the engine side and transmission side is all plugged in how it needs to be. and then I can just wire up the loose wires. Like I said, there's power and ground to the battery for the Holley harness. There's a chassis ground. There's the switched 12 volt. I think there's another power that needs to get hooked up, and a few things like that, and the fuel pump wire. That's kind of it that's preventing this thing from firing up. So I'm going to try to get those all ran. We're not going to worry about lights or anything right now. But once I get all those ran, that and hook up the shifter cable, and this thing could actually move under its own power. Like, obviously we can't drive it yet. The radiator's not mounted, no hoses, anything like that. I will have to double check. I think there's oil in it. Looks like there's a little bit of something in there. I'll make sure to put some in it before we ever try to start it. Oil and transmission fluid. So I'm going to... man, that shifter's cool. That shifter just does not fit the rest of this car. Oh, but I love it. Anyway, yeah, I'm going to try to get those ran. Like I said, shouldn't take super long. Just been... Get out of here, B. Go away. Anyway, I'm going to try and get those wires ran. I don't know what I'm going to do for like ignition and starter switches yet. I might do what I did in the S10 and just put some toggles in there for the time being. We don't really need anything crazy. I don't want it to be like a big eyesore or anything like that, though. So I'll do some thinking on that. That'll probably be one of the last things that I do. And I'll probably run the, like if I do them just off a toggle, I think I'll do the ignition like accessory switch through a relay, so that a relay activates like a bus bar, instead of just having everything go through the switch. I think that's probably what I'll do. Anyway, I'm gonna get to work. Alright, it's been a couple weeks, but back to wiring this thing. I've done a little bit of progress here and there. Let me show you what I've come up with. See? That's looking pretty good, right? I've got, I don't remember what I've shown you guys. So I've got a bus bar under the carpet. That is getting straight battery power. That is where the, not the battery cable for the ECU, those go here back to the battery, but that is where the constant 12 volt for the Holley goes. And currently where these two 12 gauge wires go to, that is going to be the switched, like the source for the switched power. And instead of doing a toggle switch, I found a key, ended up just saying screw it and put a little hole in the very bottom of the dash here. I did make a box that I was going to just like screw underneath here, but I was like, man, we'll just use this. So that is where those two red wires go for battery power to this, and then there's a purple wire going out to the starter. The red and white ignition wire for the Holley goes to the ignition side of this, and then this yellow wire is for switched accessories, which I've not set up yet, because I don't know if I want to try to reuse the stock fuse block in this thing, or make my own, or what I want to do just yet. So right now I've got that just hanging out. I wanted to run the wire just in case I do need it for anything. I don't have to tear it all back apart and add it in there. And then I got the battery's going to be sitting right about here. I would like to get a different battery for it, because I've had a guy tell me in the past that these ones with the plates like this, if you launch hard or anything like that, those plates will wiggle around and they'll contact each other and stuff like that. But we've had them sideways like that in jack for, I don't know, a year now at least, and it hasn't had any issues, so we'll see. And went and picked up this monster battery cable. So this is actually our positive. This is going up to a lug on the firewall, and so the battery comes up, goes to that lug, and then from that lug goes starter, alternator, and a 10 gauge to that bus bar. I'm going to do another one of these that'll go grounded right to the frame. And then all I've got to do is put the starter on, get that wired up, and then put some oil in it, filter, and set the Holley up. And this thing, I think, should at least turn over, possibly run. Probably not very well, and if it does, it'll be super loud because we just have open shorties right now. But yeah, I'd like to end this video with at least cranking this thing over. So I've got a little bit of work still to do. I've got to drill some holes, probably over in here. Yeah, because I think right here is the frame rail, so probably in here to bring the battery cables up. I might actually see about turning the battery like this. That might be the way to go. And then I can bring them up right through there. So yeah, just slowly taking things off the list. And then I've got this ICT billet alternator bracket that's also going to go have the not water pump. Jeez Louise. The power steering pump over there. I don't know if I want to run it, but I don't know. I'll probably run it just because why not? It's not a bad setup. Gets rid of the tensioner pulley and you just push this guy out. So I'm going to try to get back to wiring this thing up. Like I said, there's not a whole lot left to do, and we might hear a little bit of noise out of this thing. Oh yeah, I don't have any fuel in it. And I also haven't wired up the fuel pump yet. Add that to the list. So regardless, it's still pretty close. If I hustle, we could hear some noise by the end of the day. So I'm gonna see how much I can hustle. All right, finished running the battery cables, got the starter all wired up. We are at the point where we can test the starter wiring and connect the battery cables, see if anything catches on fire. Fingers crossed it doesn't, knock on wood it doesn't. Ain't nothing to it but to do it. Don't know how much juice that battery has. We'll know here in a second. Oh. I think it's very dead. Oh. Maybe. We've got a starter though. Not entirely sure why the screen isn't coming on though. So, but we do have starter, so that's good. Let me throw the battery tester on that thing, wherever I left it in this freaking pigsty. There we go. You can use a multimeter, but these are pretty quick and easy. Well, it says it's at 12.1, 12.2. Holds good. Alright, so I'll have to check connections everywhere just to be... Oh, I know what the issue is. Dumbass. The power and ground for the ECU weren't hooked up. Alright, we're good. And starter cranked over. I don't want to actually spin it because there's very little oil in the engine. And the tranny lines don't go to anything, so if it cranks over for, you know, much at all, it'll start puking everything out. But, yeah, we are getting dang close. So that is righteous as all heck. I think that counts as hearing some noise, because I just remembered that I have to flop a couple wires around in the crank sensor plug, because this is a 58X motor. I don't know, I think I'm going to try to tackle a bunch of the tedious little stuff off camera real quick, which means we'll probably end the video here. So hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing and clicking that bell to get notifications. I'll see you next time.